Liberians, it's a pleasure being on your streaming device this afternoon. If you are in the United States, in on the East Coast, it's around like 12:30 in the afternoon, and if you're in Liberia, it's around like 4:30 in the evening. And this is the melting pot, all right. And we usually say that the melting pot is that Liberian-owned broadcast where we discuss issues pertaining to Liberia, matters relating to Liberia on diverse issues. So, Liberia, located on the west coast of Africa, is Africa's oldest independent republic, right? And I happen to have been born in Liberia, and for over 177 years, we find it difficult um, governing this country. And so, even though some of us find ourselves outside of the country, but we just try to remain engaged in what is going on back home in Liberia. So, the melting pot is one of those platforms where we discuss issues relative to Liberia, and especially current issue, developing issues, and we hope to make our voices heard, on major issues. So yesterday, we started off on a topic of presidential leadership. We talked a lot about presidential leadership yesterday, and then we intended to have talked about, if you look on the screen there, we had in mind to discuss the issue about the noise going around about the possible visa restriction for some African countries. And last but not the least, we mentioned that we want to talk about issues relating to integrity institutions in Liberia. And so yesterday we talked extensively about presidential leadership. I will just recap in like 5 minutes, and then I go into the second point that has to do with issues relating to the visa restrictions. So on presidential leadership yesterday, we mentioned and we talked about some of the key things we talked about. Please share the show. Thank you for coming on. Was that for our country that is 177 years old, it's such a shame that we're still struggling with leadership in our country. And if you went on Amazon and you put in my first and last name, like you see on the screen, Clarence Pearson, you will find a number of books on there that I've written. And one of those books talked about the three factors, and the three factors mention the issues that has to do with the struggling and the leadership struggle, I should say, the leadership struggle of Liberia, how we fail to get it right. And, too many times in our country, we suffer for political leadership. And if you read that book, The Three Factors, that was just written this year, you will find that you have you have bad elections results is one of the factor. We discussed that. We also talked about the issues that have to do with bad leaders. It's another factor that hurting Liberia. And we talked about sycophancy as the third factor. So say we went to elections, we are noted for voting wrongly or voting badly. And by that we mean you went to the elections to vote, and instead of voting people who have proven track record of performance that yield the results, we go through sentiments, inducement, and maybe tribal line, ethnicity, connection, or party politics, and we just elect people into public service, and at the end of the day, they cannot meet the expectations. And then because of that bad election results, we end up with bad leaders, the second factor that the book talked about. So it's on Amazon, it's all over the world in other bookstores, all right, online bookstore. So with that, a bad leadership also comes the third factor that has to do with sycophancy, where people are not honest enough to tell the leaders that, listen, even though I elected you, are we from the same party, we from the same tribe, the same village, the same town, the same ethnic group, but if you're not doing the right thing, I'll have to tell you. I'll have to criticize you. I have to let you know, because letting you know it helps in the governing process of fixing what is wrong. It's like you go to the doctor and you find it difficult identifying what the problem is. If the doctor cannot find out what the problem is, there cannot be a solution. So, say you went to the doctor and the doctor decides not to examine you, or probably examine you but decided not to tell you what's actually wrong with you because you are friends or your family, and then they hide that negativity from you, what is wrong with you, they hide it from you. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is that you're not going to get the treatment or the medical attention that you need to be healthy. And that's what we're talking about when it comes to sycophancy. So people go about praising political leaders, singing the praise, shouting, giving wrong information about them out there, only to make them to appear good because they're benefiting one way or the other from them. And then we perpetuate bad leaders in whatever they do in the country. So the book talked about those three things. So yesterday we talked about on leadership, we talked about presidential leadership. And some of the things we mentioned was, look, leaders, a good leader will give sense of purpose and direction, vision, right? And it's influential, it's motivational. And so for you to have a strong presidential leadership, you need someone who is able to give people pointers as to where you want the country to go. Because in the absence of those pointers, influence, vision, purpose, country stays stagnated. Everyone do their own thing. And we said yesterday, don't get us wrong. We know that the country has had several agendas, we call them development plans, right? We've had Vision 2030, Vision 2040, name them. We've had poverty reduction strategy. We've had Pro-Poor agenda. Now we have the arrest agenda for inclusive development. Whatever documents we have, the documents in themselves will not yield results until you have the kind of leadership that drives them. All right. And then if you want to hear the detail of that conversation, just go back to our post from yesterday. And but the thing here is that what we mentioned was that when President Boykai goes to cabinet meeting or have the opportunity to speak to people he appointed in government, and you hear him saying, we will and we will and we will. Or hear him say, if we do not, the A factor, if we do not find job for young people, they might come and disturb us in our offices, in our homes. You know, that's not leadership. So, and what we said was leadership comes in the tune of providing the direction. So, if say if youth unemployment is a problem, in that cabinet meeting, you probably might be saying, as the president for presidential leadership, how many job have we created the past 1 year? What is the out what is the outturn of our universities and colleges and technical institutes, right? How many young people are we putting out of this institution, and in what areas are we putting them out? How can we measure that against how the employment opportunities currently is situated, right? And then go beyond that and say, okay, so how can we now create the opportunities for them to get employed? And then you must come with direction. You must come with answers as the president. And we're not saying you will have all of the answers, but you will come with the drive. You come with the pointers. And I gave one example yesterday. Take agriculture, for example. So agriculture falls within the agenda that President Boyka has, right? So in agriculture, in that entire agenda for inclusive development, you'll find that agriculture in the national budget is a portion of $15 million. That $15 million is not direct input to agriculture. That $15 million is for salaries and for equipment and for um, stationaries and someone's scratch card or fuel for generator. Those are the things we're talking about. So yesterday we said was that what if say the national budget in 2026 says that we will put in agriculture 100 million, and it's going to go for direct input into agriculture, and that 100 million say
If somebody, like we said yesterday, somebody wants to be technical and say, but we don't even have the infrastructure for agriculture to even produce rice. So, but yeah, then the first 100 million must go to setting up infrastructure for agricultural productivity at the industrial level. So if we have that mindset and make that investment, what we do is that we create even more jobs for the young people, right? And direct jobs. So we're not only in the progression process toward becoming self-sufficient in food, but we are also in the process of creating more jobs, right? So instead of having 300 million, 500 million in the budget only to pay salaries of few people that I said yesterday on the top tier of those who we consider to be the wealthy people in Nigeria, we probably might make more jobs by taking money from few people and putting it into more people at the lateral level, the middle class, and those on the bottom, right? So those are some of the things we talked about. And then we mentioned that you could cut down on the duplicity. The word duplicity means you got too many people doing the same job, or you have too many institutions with similar functions. You can cut those things down so that you create, you generate the resources to put into investment, and not the kind of investment we're talking about in our budget today, but input investment into direct input into like agriculture, and then that stimulate in the agriculture sector create more jobs for a lot of people. So why you might be taking few people from from overspending a lot of money on the wage bill, if you're creating more jobs for majority of the people. And those very few people that you take those top tier duplicated functions from can be spread out across the 15 counties, the 73 electoral districts, working on a very direct project you're talking about. But what it does is that it doesn't only put money into their pocket, but it creates a chain effect, what we call a ripple effect. Like, for instance, I gave you an example. Somebody said to me yesterday, it is important that you take your time to talk about this that you spoke about yesterday. So, take, for example, this, right? We got agriculture college, we got engineering college in the military, we have in the airfield, we have the engineering department, and we got prison, people in prison doing nothing, spending 20, 30 years behind bars, don't see the light of day and all that kind of stuff. We have people in colleges, agriculture college, we have people in educational college, we have people in doing sociology and other things, accountants. So what happens if you put 100 million directly into agriculture building infrastructure across the 15 counties, across the different agricultural districts that we have already developed in our agriculture plan, right? Now, say you want to build a state-of-the-art agricultural plant, a central location for that, maybe somewhere in Brown County, but then you want to have warehouses across the 15 counties to spread out logistical network that will feed into the state of the art uh, multi processing plant, whatever you want to call it, which means turning our raw product into finished product by adding value to them. So if the rice, you make the rice, you bring it to the place. This, I said state of the art. I'm not talking about some fiat, like Mese fiat, or yama yama thing, but state of the art that is able to produce rice on a large scale, process rice on a large scale, packaging, baking, design, whatever you want to call it. Maybe including cocoa, coffee, corn, whatever else, peanuts, pepper, whatever else we are able to grow and to want to do it on a large scale, like you can see all the little bagging, all the kind of thing, whether it's palm oil or whatever it is. But whatever industrial skill we think about from agriculture, whatever crop we pick as primary crop, just say for me, I say rice, because we want to be self-sufficient in rice, because rice has a high level of importation. And the importation of rice, if you put how much quantity of rice we input in the dollar amount, in high effect, the high currency that we need in our country that goes out because of that importation, you can see how much we will benefit if we can cut down on the importation and do more internal production. to feed ourselves and to sell it out there and get money from out there instead of giving money out there that we don't have to begin with. Those are the things we're talking about. So if you try to do that, and then yesterday we said that that in itself is a revolutionary idea because what it's going to do is that, say, all the kids who are in TVET, President Brogan talking about employing you, say all the kids are in TVET, technical vocational training programs, right? You get masons, you get carpenters, you get electricians, you got plumbers, right? And you got other areas. At the same time, in agricultural college, you got students who study agriculture. What happens if you decide to build those plants across the 15 counties, warehouses, housing for workers that will go to man those plants to run those plants, or people who go in there to go work in those areas, you opening Liberia up. So the kids are getting training, but they also have somewhere to do practical, they get somewhere to go and exercise the skill, put the skill to use. All right. So just by not only giving them skills, but giving them opportunity when they come from into school to go and exercise that skill somewhere to make it useful for national development. That's what we're saying. So put that away. Let's go to education. If you start to develop an agricultural structure like that, that's going to be manned by professional people, and people got to move into different parts of the countries with their family members, their children, and stuff like that. Of course, there's a ripple effect to education as well. So education, someone who's in education will say, well, but if I'm carrying my children down to Salo, then I want to see that the Salo community college is improved. The high school in community, the community high school in Salo or private high school, whatever it is, has to improve. So you have teachers from teachers college and then training centers going across the country because they have opportunities to go and earn a living. We have to take our development mindset from Monrovia and spread across the country. And one way to do that is to directly invest into our developmental agenda, right? So so not only that, it is going to impact education. So take for instance, like what's happening like in Monrovia, right? You got people who like myself when I was in Nigeria, I did do I have to go to work, but I volunteer also to work and teach at the same time in high school or at some level lecturing at universities, right? So I contributed my time. I was trying to be helpful to the community by helping others to gain the education that I myself had acquired. So just by having professional people across the different counties, across the different countries, being a part of that national development import of physical cash from the government to build that structure and build infrastructure that we're seeing. Obviously, if you have a professional like me in Maryland County, my home county, of course, then you have my service as well in Tokyo University where I might want to go and volunteer because I know my kids are there, or I know family members are there, or I know I got young people in the community who I have interest in because of how I'm moved by what I see the need for the young people. So I go to lecture at the same time at the university, or maybe I go to teach in the high school. So not only am I going to be a contributor towards that infrastructure job work that I'm doing, but I'm also making myself available and giving back to the community as well. So don't even stop there. That kind of an investment, intentional investment, probably also might take other businesses to those areas. For instance, if say like bone mines in the day, Lamco in the days, when bone mines set up that infrastructure, hospital had to go there, supermarket had to go there, cinema had to go there, road network had to go there. That's how you develop. And then the more money you put in people's pocket because of the job availability for the people who under the ladder and those in the middle class, the more jobs opportunity you give to them across the country, the more they're able to get out of poverty. And not just that, but they're able to pay the taxes. The government still raise revenue. At the same time, whatever infrastructure that is laid out, whether by private people using it to process the produce, whatever the case is, or it is the local people who is using the process the produce that generate resources for Liberia as well. So it's self multiplying. So that's how you turn the resources around of the country. But instead, we run a national budget every year. Over 70% of the budget is from hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to mouth. And we have leaders who are sitting there because they can ride fancy cars and they can fuel the generator at home, or they can buy scratch card, or they can build fancy houses and homes for themselves. They feel it's okay. So they temporarily sponge on the public resources, do mediocre things, things that don't have multiplying effects. And then at the end of the day, by the time they leave, the country is left to where it is. All right, that's enough of that. You go to my previous video from yesterday, you see more on that content. Let's go to the next thing. So about the U.S. visa restriction stuff. So there is this stir in Liberia, and let me be frank, it's not just in Liberia, it's around the world, right? Where there is this quote unquote leaked information that the United States government, through President Donald Trump in his immigration crackdown, and not just immigration crackdown, but for the security of the United States. Don't forget, the United States government is going through a lot internationally. And to be frank, the United States is not in a favorable place when it comes to international geopolitical circumstances. Let me tell you why. The United States is in a crisis. Is supporting Ukraine before Trump came in there, supported Ukraine and gave Ukraine weapons to fight the war against Russia. In in the study of war, they call that proxy war. Proxy war means you throw right and you hide your hand, right? So they gave the Ukrainians the weapons to be able to strike Russia. So even though diplomacy will not be easily just trashed so that we see an open war, but we all know there are tensions and there are people who are looking for ways also to hurt America. That's open secret, right? And not that Russia alone, but within the Middle East, right? You have the majority in Middle Eastern countries that are not happy with how America is supporting Israel, and Israel is killing Palestinians in mass, killing Palestinians in great numbers. So there are not many people in Asia that are happy about America also. So again, there will be people who want to get back at the United States. And then there's this whole thing about border control and not just border control, but deportation of people and the people developing some high feelings, right? So the United States will want to have the opportunity to make sure that if anyone's coming to this country with all of the harsh foreign policy the United States has and the number of conflict that is involved with that, they are able to determine who's coming through this country. And so that they know they're safe. If you all can, if you were around 2001 and you saw the 9/11 situation, you understand that no one takes for granted the possibility of terrorist attack on the United States, right? With the bombing of the Twin Towers in New York. So it's understandable that America wants to be careful as to who comes into the country because you can have terrorists on the plane, right? And they could hijack the plane and do the same mayhem and cause the same chaos that we saw 2001 with the 9/11 attack. But when you put all of those together, you cannot blame the American government who wants to have this level of protection for their citizens and for their people. So what I don't understand is this. Why are Liberians seizing on a leaked information to to further expose the weaknesses of Liberia? That's what I don't understand. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So say um, some people discussing passport issues, some people discussing not just passport issues, some people discussing visa overstay, other people trying to discuss the issue of giving nationality citizenship to other people, whatever the case might be. So those are the issues those are the talking points around there. But let me get something clear here. When we hear people say there are leaked documents, sometimes those things happen because they want to. It's like a fake Either you get maybe you feel something hiding in the grass, right? And you just don't want to go and cut the grass. You just want to test it to see what's in there. So you take stone and throw it in the grass, and then all the birds fly out of it. Then you get to know what is in there. So they just throw a bait out there and say, it's New York Times reporting this and other media reporting this. Oh, there is a leaked information that the U.S. government is intending to put sanctions on African countries in three categories: the red, the orange, and the yellow. Like you happens to fall in the yellow. And then they say, oh, there are criteria. So you point any of these categories are criteria that you must meet in order to be either removed from the list, or if you cannot meet the criteria, they take you to another level of the list. If you cannot meet it, they take you to another list. So if you're in the yellow, you're in a fairly not too troublesome level, but it's more difficult for you to get visa. If you're in the orange, it's even more difficult for you to get visa. If you're in the red, no visa at all. So Liberia is in the yellow. Now, Liberians have taken to social media and they've made it their business to dig up all of the negative things they can think about that will hurt Liberia to get on the yellow or even get on the orange or get on the red. And by that I'm saying we bring our dirty laundry in the public. We bring our dirty laundry in the public. Is that going to happen for political reasons? Yes. Is it a good thing that we're doing for our country? No. Because in the end, by doing that, we're not just hurting politicians because we're doing that. We're hurting ordinary people. We're hurting business people. We're hurting Liberians who travel for business. We're hurting Liberians who travel because they got a second home in the United States. We're hurting Liberians who probably got families they have to visit. All right. We're hurting Liberians who probably might want to come to conferences. We're hurting Liberians who probably might want to come to school, right? So what we're doing is that somebody say, oh no, a little rat in your house. There you go and start bringing all the flu outside. You start bringing all the white rat outside. You start bringing all the black rat outside. You start bringing all the fat one outside. You start bringing all the slim one outside. The person will say, I think you got rat in your house. And then because I think you got rat in your house, you're gonna lock the door. So instead of you keeping your problem to yourself and trying to solve it on the inside, you want to wash your dirty laundry on the outside. So then, not only do we see on social media, but then I also saw the Senate Committee I think on Foreign Affairs holding on a public section, a public hearing, where they are grilling. Grilling means they're asking hard questions, grilling the officials, including the foreign minister of Liberia, on open platform to the public. That matter that we're discussing is not matter that you play out in public. That's a matter that you consider to be of security concern to your country. You might want to go into a closed door section and have a conversation. And when you have a conversation in the closed door section, then you come out in the public with a unified voice as a country to speak to the issue. Liberia, we're hearing, fellow citizens, we're hearing issues pertaining to this. The Liberian government, in, in concert across maybe the three branches of government, whatever the case is, have developed certain measures on these things to address them so that we cannot fall into this situation that is being discussed. So that is if it is not wrong, right? That should be your approach. Because listen to me, it is easy. Leadership, it is easy to show your worst. but it is difficult to clean the perception that that words has created in the public. Let me give you an example. Say you have um a, 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 a bag of flour, and that bag of flour is your diplomatic tension, your diplomatic issue, your diplomatic concern, the thing that you don't want others to know about and to see until you can sift through it, refine it, and bring it to the public glare, whether it is your own people or it is the international community, right? So say you bring that problem, considering it like a flower in the bag, right? And the wind is already
the outside. The storm is already forming on the outside, which means the political, social, economic tension is building. So the wind is forming on the outside, and you bring your flour bag outside and you open the bag with the intention to sift it on the outside where the storm is blowing. What do you think? I just want to give you a mental picture. What do you think is going to happen to the flour? It's going to spread out in the wind. It's going to spread out so easily. But the problem I'm saying here is that to go and gather them back after you sift it in the wind, to gather them back into the bag, is a problem. Even if you had the sophistication to do so, it's a problem. That is the reason why a lot of the times you hear people say diplomatic discussion happens behind closed door. Presidents have closed doors meeting. Ambassadors and things they have closed door meeting. The reason they say closed door is because there are some things that is not to come into the public glare. And even if it is already in the public glare, right? You want to still manage it so that the public will not panic or they will not be further depressed or distressed by what is going on here. So no, so let me make myself clear here. I'm not saying there will not be people with political intent to want to profit and score political score on the issue that is developing in the country. Yeah, politicians will try to take advantage of it. But this is what I'm saying. Those who are in government itself cannot be the one who's providing more cause for panic. All right. Am I against public hearing? No. But not everything requires a public hearing. You have to be able to decide what is appropriate for public hearing and what is not. So, for instance, in this case of the US visa issue, is a leaked information, is rumor. Why would you want to have a public hearing over a rumor? It is not official. It is not something that you have a country to country legal communication that says this is what's going on, and then now it's a public information, so we got to discuss it publicly. That should be discussed in closed doors. Why, at the same time, mediation is taking place in the back. Mediation will mean that you probably will take the phone and call your counterpart in the American embassy and ask, "We're hearing this and that. Can you substantiate the situation? What we're hearing? Oh no, that's not true. It's misinformation. It is not official." Then we can. But then there also this another side to this. There's also a possibility that it is an actual conversation that is happening in the White House, right? So actual conversation. It just not has reached to a point where it is becoming implementable policy that has been announced. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It definitely probably might going to happen, but it's in the formative stage, and they just throw you the bid, like I said, to see what stir the bid will cause out there. So what would you want to do in that instance? So the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia may not have that information. So you probably want to use your ambassador in the U.S. to use the call rapprochement, right? Use connection, because you're not ambassador for nothing. When you are an ambassador, it means you have privileged information as well. You have contacts, you have sources, and within the government in which you're serving, that you can get information from. So yeah, then you contact in the host country of the embassy, you contact the ambassador to go in and dig into some of his sources or her sources, and to put the ear to the ground. Yeah, what's going on there? Look, we're hearing this. I know it's not official yet, but can you give me some, maybe some heads up what's happening in the back room? And then if you got the information from the back room, even though it may not be an official notice, but at least you got heads up. And with the heads up, oh yeah, you can start working on those things that you are expecting to come up. If you cannot prevent yourself from being on the list or your backdoor channel negotiation, then you can start preparing maybe some fiscal policy, or you can start preparing some public policies, foreign policy instruments, or some laws, some tightening some things, making some proactive statements in the public, adjusting some measures on some things, and communicating in an effective way that will communicate across board that substantial effort is being made to remedy the situation. Then you start to do that in advance if you have what we call reliable first-hand information, even though it's not been officially announced. So it bothers me to see the level of immaturity in our governance. It also bothers me to see the level of immaturity in our press, especially so that even if you want to be political about it, there are some things you cannot just be political about. Let me tell you why. So if you want to politicize something because you want to gain political score against whoever is in power, notice this: there are some things that impact the entire population, like this thing we're talking about. Visa restriction impacts the entire country. So even though you might be affecting President Boyka, but you're going to be affecting the very people that you want to remove President Boyka from for to come and help them. So what are you telling the people of Liberia? Oh, okay, you know what? I'm going to stress this issue, this information, and hurt President Boyka's government's image. Then at the end of the day, I come back and say, "Give me your vote." But yeah, when you were hurting President Boyka's image, you were not only hurting President Boyka, you were hurting my son, you were hurting my daughter, you were hurting my business, you were hurting my education, you were hurting so many things about me that you didn't take into consideration. Because this other kind of visa restriction is not to individuals, it's to the entire country. So Liberians, I think we need to be more careful. Let me pivot, let me go on to integrity institutions. Let me go on to integrity institutions. It's sad. It's sad for Liberia that we have a president who was privileged to have served for 12 years as vice president under Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And I'm not going to be insulting to say, oh, he should have learned from Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. So he's a mature man. He doesn't have to learn from Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but he could have learned while being vice president within the proximity of the presidency, seeing a lot of things that go on from the presidential level, right? So this is what I'm thinking to myself. So President Boyka saw the restructuring of Liberia from the post-war perspective, meaning coming out of war where you had total breakdown in infrastructure, rule of law, and social services, and everything were at zero, and we started to build from scratch. So he was there and he saw majority of the things that people who came to help us, country that came to help us, told us that, listen, these are things that if you do, it will help you strengthen your governance structure. It will strengthen your governance structure. And by doing these things, it's not only going to strengthen your governance structure, it's going to make you favorable to getting the kind of assistance that you would need, because you would have gained credibility, you would have gained trust, you would have gained integrity, you would have gained the confidence of your people and the confidence of the international community. So part of those things that President Boyka sat and saw was the fact that politics can be very dangerous in the hands of bad people. I don't have to emphasize that. You can see in Liberia, it's pretty easy. You can see in the 177 years of Liberia, since Liberia independence, you can see it happen. You get plenty examples. I don't have to tell you any. Politics can go wrong in the hands of dangerous people. People who are so bent on themselves for the self-aggrandizement, their own interest above the national interest. They will do anything to circumvent the country's interests. We call that political influence. And with political influence, then you hear us say a lot in governance, we need to see political will. And sometimes it goes to say we need to see strong political will. So because political will is often lacking and in need and in want at times, structures has to be in place so that 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 tendency to not have that political will would not be so widespread, so that it impact major institutions that the country needs to function properly so that the country can run well. President Boyka sat there and sound people, educated people, not Liberians alone, well-educated people from other countries who have seen institution work and have seen institution get tested and have seen institution reach a viable level for productivity, advise our country and told us you need to do X, Y, and Z to take a country to this level. Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf listened to them because she didn't have a choice. Liberia in a desperate situation, need of every help we can get to make our country move forward. So she didn't have a choice. She had to listen. President Boyka sat in the legislature as president of the Senate. And I'm saying that for a reason. As president of the Senate, every law that 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 were made, all of the laws, I should say, that were made at that time had to pass through President Boyka's office, that he had to sign off on. In some instances, he sat in the very debate where those laws were made and those laws were discussed, and the value of those laws were discussed and agreed upon. And he, President Boyka, as vice president, president of the Senate, signed off on those laws. I'm not saying all those laws were perfect. And that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying some of those laws were very, very important for bringing Liberia back into a respectable state of being, where we will be respected on the outside and the credibility of the Liberian people on the inside will also be respected. Having said that, one of those laws was the 10 new laws, were the 10 new laws. So I will take my time to explain before I close what were the 10 new laws. So in short, the 10 new laws were those laws that our international partners and other experts told us, listen, the president got too much to do. And then because of politics, people sometimes try to arm twist institutions that are serving the country and that's supposed to be serving so that they are impartial. Impartial means they are not taking political sides. They are not saying, oh, because we're from the Unity Party or we're from the CDC Party or we're from the ANC Party, so we will run the entity because of our party's alignment. No, they will have to run it for the common good of the entire country, entire populace. For that to happen, they need to have some level of protection from the very president who has the power from the Constitution to hire and to fire at will. So if you follow me, I'm not arguing that the president does not have the constitutional power to fire, to appoint and to fire at will and pleasure. But I'm saying the very president, Ellen and Boyka, with all of the experts that were in the country at the time helping to put Liberia back on track, said, you guys will have to agree to relieve yourself of some of the powers that the Constitution gave you, not necessarily stripping that power from you, but refining that power. So let me explain what I mean when I say refine the power. I hear people argue and say, oh, the president has the will and pleasure to appoint and to dismiss. But at the same time, the Constitution in itself does not have all of what it takes to implement itself. Any constitution for that matter, whether the American government or any other country in the world, the Constitution must have other laws that are enacted, and that's why we have the legislature. Other laws that are enacted to complement the Constitution, to work alongside the Constitution, to make the Constitution operable. That word operable means to make the Constitution effective, to give it day-to-day relevance in our governance structure. Even at that, when you even have those secondary laws that complement the Constitution, you also have policies and procedures, right? That comes to facilitate those other secondary laws, to make them, to enforce those laws. That's why important in offices they have also policies, they got procedures, they got other rules, and they got regulations, they got other acts and stuff. So what am I saying here is that, so it's not that this, the tenure law tried to deprive the president of the constitutional right to appoint and dismiss at his will and pleasure, but the wisdom of governance from experience across the world, proven methodology shows that political influence can also have negative tendency on how governing structure function. So then the president, Ellen, President Boyka, and others who have goodwill and intention for the country, saying they are patriotic, love the country, have to agree that certain rights of the president has to be refined by other laws that will be enacted that will not allow them to arbitrarily influence certain functionaries of government. So that when those functionaries are working, they will have the confidence in themselves that my president gave me her word, or my president gave me his word, that when I go to work, I will not be saying to myself, oh, the president will come tomorrow when I just woke up one minute, the president say you are suspended or you are fired. Move from there. We don't want you there, no, because I don't like you. No. The president loved the country so much that the president is able to say, I will reduce some of my power so that I will not just come on you and say, I will jump on you and tell you, say, move from there. I don't want you there no more. Because I want you to work freely, good conscience, no fear, no tension, no looking across your shoulder that the president coming haunt me. No, work freely for the Liberian people. The Liberian people did not implore me to come and hijack them and hurt them. So if I'm going to even control myself, I'm going to have to give myself some restraints and tell you some of those restraints. Tell you some of those restraints. And let me say this for the Liberian people, those who are listening to me. Tenure is not a law against the president. Tenure is a law in favor of the people. And we need to see it like that. Tenure law is not a law against the presidency. Tenure law is the law that the president support in favor of the people, against even the president himself. Say, look, if I would choose to interfere with this people's work, deserve, then these people that are working for the people should be able to look me in the face and say, Mr. President, with all due respect, no, we cannot do this against the interest of the people. That's what tenure law protects, that political will, that when the day the political will is not there, the tenure law can stand up and say, Mr. President or Madam President, with all due respect, we know you want to work, but at this point, you are not going in the right direction. They may not come in and tell you like that in an insulting manner, but that's what the tenure law tries to accomplish. Am I saying there will be times the tenure law will be challenged by someone who is in the position of tenure, but does not have the best interest of the country at heart? Yes, there will be times. And the tenure law provides for that, that the president has the power to suspend or to terminate the office of a tenure person. But again, it goes down now to having a very good cause. And there where I argue with a lot of people and they try to argue with me, I say it should go down to a very good cause. That's why people who serve on the board of tenure institutions should not be people who are going there to just say yes sir to the president. They should also be people of integrity, people of character, people who can look at the president and say, Mr. President, oh, we see the complaint against this person, we will investigate this thing. But we've reached to a place where we believe that the accusation against this person, having heard both sides, and to the point that we could not even, to the point where we could not even, we could not handle the case ourselves. We established the judicial ad hoc committee, meaning whether it is with some lawyers from the Liberian Bar Association to hear the complaints and advise us as board. And that quasi the judicial body advises to us, listen, like the Elections Commission. The Elections Commission, when they having complaints, they don't give their complaint to anybody, they give it to a legal-minded person. And the legal-minded person will hear the complaints and adjudicate the situation on a quasi way. And if the person stay insatisfied, they go to the Supreme Court and make an appeal to the Supreme Court. So the board can even say, listen, we've heard this situation, but we don't think we have the full capacity to adjudicate this situation, and we don't have the legal mind to do this if it's very on legal issue or whatever issue it might be. We'll have a secondary ad hoc committee to look into this case and advise you properly. And if it means recommending this person to the Justice Ministry of Prosecution, all of those steps needs to be taken. But the tenure person should have that guarantee that they can do the people's job and do it so effectively with boldness that they are not afraid for their job. But President Burka destroyed all of that. He destroyed that by jumping into the presidency, undermining all of the tenure positions in the country. And to the effect now that PPCC, who's supposed to be vetting people for procurement, they are so threatened, they just pass every procurement plan that came in front of them because they're afraid the president, when they see the president where he will fire them. Anti-Corruption Commission. Like I can say this bluntly, they're afraid themselves. They're working at the will and the pleasure of the president. They feel that if they do the job properly, they will lose their job because there are powerful people in the country who will go after them. And they will wake up one morning and they will be dismissed. And I don't think that is good for our country. So now we have people in Central Bend who got there because of political sympathy. We have people at LTA who got there because of political sympathy. We got people at the NAFA who is there because of political sympathy. We have people now who are at other areas because they're there for political sympathy. They're not there because of integrity and credibility. They've lost the confidence of the people. And that's bad governance. So as I bring this broadcast to a close, President Boyka needs to check break. Yesterday I said, even the arrest agenda for inclusive development, the very fact that we have 70% of the financial support for that development plan should come from outside of us does not show leadership from President Boyka. I think the country should take full responsibility for the agenda, the arrest agenda for inclusive development. But the whole, we should take responsibility for the $8 billion that budget that plan need to. And then if there's going to be any money coming from outside, it should be complementary, meaning it should be plan B. We should put ourselves in the forefront and say we need to raise this money. And to do that, tell ourselves no revenue intake in the country, no matter where it is coming from, which entity, whether once you are a revenue generating entity, let us do a complete assessment, analysis of every single area money will come from in Liberia as revenue, whether for Liberia, whether outside the country or inside the country. Let President Boyka tell the finance ministry and LRA that no matter, I know how you're gonna do it. You guys are the expert. I'm not the expert. Joe Bucker, I'm the president. I'm not the expert. You guys are the expert. I'm employer, the Liberian poor employer. You have developed a system that there will be no revenue in the name of Liberia generated that will not come through LRA and that will not pass through a national revenue account at Central Bank of Liberia, so that in the next 2 or 3 years we can know what the revenue, the true revenue strength of our country is. Secondly, no institution should spend money outside of a national spending bill developed by the country. Nobody. Like the CTM, I gave example yesterday, like the CTM new arrangements that we have. NPA has the audacity to put in a new agreement. They will receive 18% of the revenue that we're generating through CT, 18% directly. No institution should be receiving any revenue to themselves that is not accounted for as the national revenue of our country. None. Any monies going to any spending entity should be through a national spending bill, nothing outside of it that is revenue connected, that did not come through the national revenue account, accounted for by LRA.
No, it's Mary.
Lastly, those of us who are overstretching the rumor, the leaked report, leaked policy discussion happening in the White House about African countries going to get on listing. It's a leaked information, it is a rumor. However, that we have gotten wind of it, let us do our groundwork and let us do it behind the scene as a government. And those of us who feel want to take advantage of this politically and score some points and make President Boyka and his government look ugly by emphasizing what we feel is bad in the government so that we can give the country a bad look, let us be careful. Do not try to benefit at the expense of the ordinary people, because when such a thing like this happens that we're discussing, it does not hurt the politicians alone, it hurt the entire country. It hurt business people. It hurt ordinary Liberians who going to visit families and friends. It hurt Liberians who wants to travel for educational purpose. It also hurt people who want to come and do business in Liberia, and the partner in the business cannot travel because of the travel restrictions. So I'm not saying we don't have issues, but trying to use this situation to put our dirty clothes out there to make it appear like Liberia deserve this punishment, as it is. It's a punishment if it comes through. Liberia deserve this punishment, then you are not doing Liberia well. You're not doing Liberia well. And lastly, President Boyka needs to find a way to give credibility and integrity back to integrity institutions. He needs to reverse 360 degree, I don't know, 120, whatever you want to call it. He will need to reverse his actions and allow tenure officials to feel protected, to feel secure, to feel that they can do their work. And one day they will not wake up and hear that they are suspended like the neck boss. They cannot wake up one day and hear that they're suspended like the NAFA boss. They cannot work on one day and find out that they suspended like the LTA bosses. They cannot work on one day and believe they can get a suspended like the CBL bosses. And then we feel it is okay. It is not okay, and we're not doing our country any good. Thank you for being there. Thank you for listening to the Melting Pot. It was a pleasure having you. Have a good day.